Today we are going to study the poem A River written by A.K. Ramanujam. Here the image of the writer. He was born on 16th March 1929. He passed away on 13th July 1993. He wrote many books. The famous books are Folk Tales from India that was published in 1991. The other books came after his death. The collected poems appeared in 1995. The collected essays was published in 1999. He got many awards as Padma Shri Award and Sahitya Academy Award. Here is the river Vaki. The Madurai city is situated on this river. The poet describes the two aspects of this river. One, the season, the river in the summer season. Second, the river in the rainy season. The great poets were born in the city, in the Madurai city. They have written about the culture, temple, poets of the past. The poets have also described the beauty of this river, but these poets have failed to describe the destruction that is caused by the river when the flood comes. Now here the poem begins. In Madurai, city of temples and poets who sang of cities and temples, the poet is talking about the river Vaki, and the Madurai city is situated on this river Vaki. And Madurai city itself is a city of temples and great poets. It is a cultural city. These poets of the past have written about the, the greatness of the city and the greatness of the temples. Now the poet describes the situation of the river in the summer season. What happens in the summer season? Every summer, a river dries up to trickle in the sand, barring the sand reefs. Strand women here clogging the water gates at the rusty bars under the bridges with patches of repair all over them. The wet stones glistening like sleepy crocodiles, the dry ones, shaven water buffaloes lounging in the sun. The poet only sang of the floods. In what manner the poet described the dry river. What happens in the summer season when the river is dried up? uh, the, the the level of the sand that is dried up, it looks like that these are just like the ribs of the sand. There are ribs in the human body. In the same manner, the lines of the sand appears that they are the ribs of the river. And strand remains here clogging the water gates. And what happens? The people visit there, women visit there, and they cut their hair. And the strand women here block the water gates. And at this stage, the gates are rusted and bars are rusted. Under the bridges are patches are repaired all the time. On the other hand, when we see there are some wet stones when the river is dried up, what happens? The wet stones glisten, shine in the sunshine. And these wet stones looks like the sleeping crocodiles, beautiful simile. At the same time, the dry ones, those stones which have dried up, they look like the buffaloes, water buffaloes, as they are lounging, taking rest in the sun. And the poets only sang of the floods. The great poets of the past have described in what manner the river appears at the time of summer. And these poets have also described about the effects of flood on that river. He was there for a day when they had all the floods. People everywhere talk of the inches rising, or the precise number of cobbled steps run over by the water, rising on the bathing places, and the weight carried of 3 village houses, 1 pregnant woman, a couple of cows named Gopi and Brenda as usual. The poet himself was there. He visited that river. What he saw there, he said that everywhere people were talking about the situation of flood in the river. They were talking. The water is rising step by step. The water is rising inches by inches. And there is a rumor about this river that the level of the water has risen to this stage or that stage. Now it has covered these bathing places and other things. But they have also described what manner the river has taken away the three villages. It had destroyed the three villages. Also one pregnant woman, a couple of cows named Gopi and Brenda. As usual. They are symbolical name in what manner the river has caused damage to the villages, to the human beings and to the animals. The new poet still quoted the old poets, but no one spoke on words of the pregnant women, drowned with the perhaps twins in her, kicking as black walls even before birth. The poet repents. These poets, the new poets, the modern poets have quoted all the old poets who have described the grandeur of the river. But these modern poets fail to describe about the losses, about the damage caused by the river, in what manner a pregnant woman was drowned there, and perhaps there were twins in her womb, and they were kicking her at the blank space, and even before birth, and they died before coming to this world, and they passed away. The poet wants to say, A.K. Ramanujam wants to say, the great poets fail to describe the loss of human beings, animals, and other losses. He said the river was what has water enough to be poetic about once in a year. Then it carries away in the first half hour three village houses, a couple of cows named Gopi and Brinda, and one pregnant woman, except the identical twins, the moles on their bodies with different color diapers to tell them apart. The poet further says that in the rainy season, the river is flooded and causes destruction to the people, to the human beings. But these poets fail to describe the loss. The three villages have been taken away, the cows has been taken away, namely Gopi and Brenda. One pregnant woman also drowned in the water and she was expecting two babies. In that manner, the poet is talking about the destruction of the river. The poet says, these poets have described the influence of the river, the grandeur of the river, but they fail to describe the loss that has been caused by the river. Now here are the main points of the poem. The poem describes the coldness of the new poets toward the harsh reality of things that they have romanticized. The poet also expresses his concern about the tradition of copying the ideas and ways of the old poet by the new poets and their inability to create something which is about the present rather than the past. The poem is about the river that flows through the city of Madurai. He first talks about the beauty of the river, then tells how it killed people. The poem has been divided into four stanzas with the different line lengths. Madurai, the city of temples and poets. These poets have sung for the beauty of the city, its temples, its river, which dry up making the sand visible in the summer season. As the water flows in a small stream, the sand looks like the ribs of the human beings. In addition to the sand, there are straws and women here under the bridges of rusted bar and also patches of repair all over them. And these rusty bars obstruct the free flow of water. There are also wet stones which are shining, look like sleeping crocodiles. And those which are dry seems to be like water buffaloes without hair, relaxing, taking rest in the sun. In addition, the poets have also written about the floods, the rainy season. However, the poets say that the poets have written only about these two seasons, the summer and the rain, and the two describing its beauty. They have not brought to their verses what loss has been inflicted on the people because of the rainy season. They fail to describe the human loss, the loss of the animals and human beings. The poet says that he was there for the day. Here refers to the poet himself. He tells that he has seen the incident when there was a flood. Everywhere people talk about the rising level of the water and the number of stones of bathing places have drawn in the river. It also carried off three village houses, a pregnant women, a couple of cows which are named Gopi and Banda as usual. The names of the cows seems to be abusing only for symbolical effect. Here the new poets still quote the old poets. And no one ever talk about the pregnant woman who was drowned with the twins in her belly, who were kicking at blank walls even before birth. It means they died before coming to this practical world. to this material world. The poet imagines that the twins were kicking at the wall to escape but could not come out, were ultimately drawn to the death with their mother. The poet never brought this tragic effect in their poems. The poet also compared and contrasted the attitude of the old poets and those of the new poets to human suffering. He has come to the conclusion that both the groups of the poets are indifferent to the human sorrows and sufferings. Their poetry does not reflect the miseries of the human beings. He has proved this point in this present poem. The river Veka on whose bank the historic city of Madurai stands has been mentioned in the poem of many poets, both past and present. The river is intimately associated with the life and culture of the Tamil people. The peculiar thing which appeals to the poet is that the river presents two different spectacles in two different seasons. It is completely dry in summer and flooded in full summer rainy season. The poem River, we get two pictures based upon two different kinds of description. In the summer, the river is almost empty, only very thin streams of water flows. So the sands from the bed of the river are visible. The stones that lie on the bed of the river also exposed to view. The force of the river under the bridges has also been described. We get a vivid picture of the river in the summer season. During the rainy season, when the flood comes, the people observe it very anxiously. They remember the rising of the river inch by inch from time to time. They remember how the stone steps of bathing places are submerged one by one. They see how these three villages' houses were damaged, carried off by the flood. They know how two cows, namely Brenda and Gopi, were carried away. They also know how a pregnant woman was also drowned in the river during the flood. Both the old and new poets have mentioned these things in their poems, but the way they have described these things in their poems shows that they were not much alive to or sympathetic with human suffering. That's why the poet is unhappy. They did not mention the name of the woman who was carrying twins. Before their birth, she was drowned in the flooded river. At the time of drowning, most probably the twins must have kicked the sides of her womb. She must have got much pain out of this. Both the new poets and the old poet did not refer to all these miseries of the women in their poetic creation, in their poetic creations. This becomes ultimately clear that they are not sympathetic with suffering human beings. They are totally passive and indifferent. This kind of attitude makes their poetry weak and unappealing. The tone of the poem is based on the sarcasm and irony. The structure of the poem has been in paragraph and single lines. There are four longer verse paragraphs and a shorter one in the beginning. There are two single isolated lines. This kind of structural arrangement contributes to the effect of irony. It also helps to grab the main points clearly. Secondly, a word can be said about the language in the poem. It is very simple on account of which the thought sequence of the poem is presented unmistakably and clearly. The river, which is symbol of life and fertility, becomes a destructive force. The poet, both the old and new, are different to the sufferings and havoc brought by the river. The emotional sterility matches the dryness, and the river water enough to be poetic once a year. His reporter witnesses the scene. The river mentioned the Vage from the Tamil legends and Purans. The poet has compared and contrasted the mindset of the old poets or the new poet to the human misery. Both the poets are apathetic to the human sorrow and suffering. Their poetry does not mirror the miseries of the human beings. On the other hand, they are concerned with the themes that are far away from the reality before them. They write about the beauty of the river full flooded, completely ignoring the devastation and human tragedy wreaked by this beastly force. The poet visitor, a modern poet, probably the poet himself, visits the Madurai when the Vaka is in flood, was extremely shaken by the dismal scene of the utter destruction caused by the river to life and property all around. He is even more stunned by this insensitive attitude and the complete unconcern of the city people. The old and new poets who are the tragic situation of human suffering fatally are dumb. He was distraught that they sang only for the flood when they should have rather tried to alleviate the people of their miserable state. Being a realistic himself, he takes a dig at these city poets for ignoring reality and attempting to flee into a made-up world of fantasy and fancy. Thanks.